There was once a young man walking down the street, not paying a whole lot of attention to where he was walking, when he fell into an open manhole. The pit into which he fell was obviously not in use. It was kind of oozy and muddy, and then he started to sink a little bit into it. He was dazed and a little bit bruised, but not seriously injured. And he looked around and realized that unfortunately, there was no way out, no ladder, no steps, no way to climb. He saw that there were a number of pipes leading in small tunnels away. He wisely thought he probably ought to not try crawling into those pipes because he didn't know his way out and risked getting himself in real trouble. So he called for help. And after a number of calls, a man heard him and went over. And then when he called for help, the man said, "You're too far down. I don't have a ladder. I am on my way home from work. I'll see if I can get you some help when I get there." Except when he got home, he completely forgot about the man he saw in the pit. Of all things, a priest was walking down the same road later. He heard the man's cries and bent over and peered in. He said, "I'm sorry." He goes, I don't have a ladder or any way to get you out. He goes, "And I'm running just about late for Mass." "I understand." And he said, but I'll pray for you. All right. The man knew he was still in trouble. And as he continued to call out, a friend of his heard him. She went over to the edge of the hole and peered in and saw her friend down there and realized that he needed help. And her response was to jump down into the pit with him. When she got there, he was frustrated. He said, "Why did you do that? Now we're both stuck here." And her response was, "Don't worry. I've fallen down into this hole before myself, and I know the way out. I've been down in this hole before myself, and I know the way out." Today's scriptures are very much about the feeling of being stuck in a pit and not knowing the way out. For Jeremiah, the pit that he was thrown into was because he spoke the truth to power. He spoke on behalf of the poor, the defenseless, the marginalized, the immigrant, the alien, the outcast. And power wanted to hear nothing of that. And they threw him into that pit to die. That's why Jeremiah ended up in the pit. But my brothers and sisters, we all end up there at some time. For various reasons, we all end up there. And what happens to faith then? It's certainly easier to believe and to pray, isn't it, when things are going wonderfully, when everybody's healthy and happy and we're prosperous and enjoying ourselves. Prayer seems to come a little bit more naturally. Yeah, but what about when we're in the pit? What about when loved ones betray us? People we counted on don't come through. What about when we've been hit by calamities that took away what seemed like our safety? Or we get the bad news of a diagnosis in ourselves or of a loved one that could lead to death? What about those times when just the world seems dark and lonely? What happens to faith then? I think two things. I think first, in general, it's important for us to remember this, if possible, before we're in the pit, but if needed, when we're there. The fact that we end up in a pit is not in any way a symbol of God's disfavor. It's not like God threw us into the pit. The fact that we end up in life's pits are because of usually one of these three things: the result of our own selfishness and stupid decisions. 2, just life is hard. No one escapes illness and tragedy and loss. Or 3, sometimes we end up in the pit just for being good, for being honest and people of integrity. That's what happened to Jeremiah. That's what happened to Jesus. And as Jesus tells us in today's gospel, it will happen to all of us. There's no way of escaping it. So if you find yourself in a pit, maybe it just seemed like you slowly descended, or maybe it felt like you just got thrown down suddenly into this pit of darkness, then what? I suggest that we first try to let our eyes adjust to the dark a bit, and then to try to trust that love is there. I am convinced that it is when we are most in the pit that God draws nearest. As a matter of fact, I believe it is when we are in the pit, if we are open to it, that we will meet and learn something of God in here that we would never meet when things are prosperous and fine. I don't know what it is. Perhaps it's just that the incredible compassion of God is even stronger, if possible, for those who are broken, or maybe even more likely that when we are in the worst of hardship, it's then that our hearts are broken open to receive the love that was already there. It's almost then that we need God. It's almost then that we realize that we can't do it ourselves. And if we're able to stay in the darkness long enough, we begin to trust and sense that quiet, loving presence of God. And we know something in us that we would know in no other way except that we've ended up in the pit. Jeremiah came to find that God was there for him in that lonely and desolate place. And my brothers and sisters, I don't wish any of you the heartache of being thrown into the pit of any kind of loss. But there's no one here who will escape it. And I pray for us all that in those dark times, we'll be able to let our eyes get adjusted to the darkness and to choose to trust that even though it seems like the shapes in the darkness are only there to hurt us, there is one there who is all love, who will never abandon us and is right there in us and around us in the darkest pits we'd ever meet. And if we could hear rightly, I'll bet we would hear Jesus himself whisper these words, with words or without. It is Jesus in those dark pits who says to us, don't worry, I've fallen down into this hole before myself, and I know the way out. Well, hello, old buddy. How are you? Great. Glad to hear it. Well, what do you got there? Shopping. Oh, you've been shopping? Can I peek what's inside? Let me see what you got here. What's that, Big Al? Nightlight. A nightlight? Why do you have a nightlight? I know. Because the dark for you is kind of scary. Yeah, the dark for you is kind of scary, isn't it sometimes? I see a nightlight's not a bad idea. There's more? Oh, yeah. Oh, Big Al, how cute is that? It is a little soft not Easter bunny, Teddy bunny. Okay, I'm sure that's a creature of some sort there. Yeah, there. It looks like there's more in there. Don't look. Okay, all right. It's okay, all right. A pacifier. A little old. You're a little old for a pacifier, but I I understand that you get scared in the dark and you're looking for things to give you comfort. Well, Big Al, here's what I would wish you could learn to trust, that even in the darkness, love is right there. Whoa, yeah. When you look around, you don't see that with your eyes, Big Al. But in your heart, you can remember that even when it feels all dark, outside or inside, that love is right there, all right? Bye. See you, buddy. And boys and girls, here's the truth. That when it seems dark in the daytime or at night, you might be all by yourself, but you will never be alone.